In this year of the midterms, many of the Republicans are vastly behind the Democrats in raising money. And in these closing few days, we're down to 15, 18 days of the midterm campaign, there are Republicans that are at a 4 or 5 or 6 to 1 disadvantage in the final days. So the question then is, can they bring it out? Can they win anyway and do as President Trump did in 2016, where he had a vast disadvantage in money? Can they do it with hard work and people listening and behaving and responding and voting? So in the years gone by, we've had a campaign of sorts that has been helping us from the Democrats. Classically, the Republicans have run against Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and you just have to wait for them to say something and say something crazy that the rest of the country realizes is totally idiotic, non-functional, and out of whack. So when Pelosi leans toward the sanctuary cities and the rest of that, we say, well, how does that work? Our federal government cannot function if the state and local folks are in defiance and are unresponsive to the needs of the national government to carry out its a requirement, that a number one requirement the federal government has is to protect us, is to maintain us as a nation. So what is wonderful about this midterm season is that we have the gift that keeps on giving. Nothing could have been better for us than the Kavanaugh hearing, and it was not just because of the hearing and not just because of the mistreatment of Kavanaugh, not just because there was this huge shift in a sense of fairness and a fundamental violation of the understanding that a person is innocent until found guilty, and that he or she has the right to confront the accusers, to testify in their own response, to provide their own defense, to know what they're being charged with, to have a definition of the crime that they allegedly committed. And in this case, it wasn't technically a crime, but it certainly fit within the criteria of that. So then we had people like Elizabeth Warren, the gift that keeps on giving, right? This is fake Ohannes. Somebody got mad at me because they're apparently part Native American, and I'm using fake Ohannes and Pocahontas and the rest of that in a pejorative sense about Elizabeth Warren. Well, it has nothing to do with me disenfranchising or demeaning Native Americans. To the contrary, it has to do with bringing out the fact that she is not one. And then we have Richard Blumenthal, the stolen valor guy, the idiot from Connecticut, God almighty. Tell me, Connecticut, how does he keep winning? Somebody must be stuffing votes somewhere. We've got Kamala Harris, who allegedly is the former Attorney General of California, which tells you how dysfunctional it is because she can't follow the rules. Then we got Amy Klobuchar, who used to be the attorney for the biggest county in Minnesota, and she can't follow the constitutional rules. We got Mazie Hirono, who says that women must be believed even if they're totally bonkers and off the whack, and that men should shut up and then stand up. So you're only a man, as far as Mazie's concerned, if you don't say anything but you stand behind her no matter what. And how she gets a single male vote, or anybody who cares about a male, or anybody who's related to a male, or anybody who was born from a male in Hawaii, and she gets their votes. She's polled to get 70% of the votes. What the hell's wrong with Hawaii? Do they not have school there? Is nobody literate? Don't they have the internet? Is there something that we can do? Maybe we'll send a boat over with some flyers so they can realize what the hell they're doing. But then we've got Avenatti, Cory Booker, I can't forget Cory, God almighty, he's a goofball. How could you graduate from Ivy League and be as stupid as that? Spartacus, I'm standing up, I'm Spartacus. Except that nobody else stood up with him, right? So it was a solo moment, and his Democrats his Democratic buddies didn't get it. And then we have Avenatti, who thinks he's going to run for president because he's an attorney representing a hooker, and then he comes up with another lady that says she went to gang rape parties, 10 of them, and that she wants to testify against Kavanaugh. God, that's a you know, how can you ask for anything better than that? If we wrote the script, we couldn't have anybody say anything as stupid out of their mouths as that. And then we've got Steyer, the guy that was into the oil pipelines but was trying to get rid of the latest oil pipeline from Canada to Texas, the Keystone one. He fought against Keystone, but he already had interest in oil pipelines. He wants to be the environmental guy in Nevada. He is carpetbagging into Nevada and carpetbagging into Arizona, trying to prove his environmental record, when in fact he was a major owner of coal mines, and the coal mines increased very substantially while he was an investor in them, even though he was basically dismantling companies and making money from kicking people out of jobs. But the gift that keeps on giving, the one that's in the corner of the Christmas tree that's absolutely perfect, is Maxine Waters. So I'm going to link you in the notes below here to Maxine in her little 5-minute diatribe, and it's absolutely fabulous. And I'm going to read you parts of it because I can't help myself, right? So she's asked about Kanye West, and she says, we have to understand the best we can what roles we play. And I digress. What roles are we supposed to play, Maxine? That's the question, right? That's the question we ask when we listen to her. So back to Maxine. And we have to understand, you know, what's our lane? Now we got a lane, right? We got a channel, we got a path we're supposed to follow, and we're not supposed to veer off the path. Back to Maxine. And you know, we are really best when we kind of stay in that lane. In other words, stand up and shut up, right? If you are a black person, an Afro-American person, get in line behind Maxine because she knows what's best for you. Or when we venture out of that lane and we don't understand what we're getting into, whether or not it's going to cause us problems. So if you don't stay behind me, and you don't follow the lead, and if you're not a good black person, I'm not going to use the N-word, because that would be the perfect thing to use in that place, because that's what she would say to somebody else. But obviously I'm not going to do that. Then you get Blondet. And so I know about Kanye and the fact that he met the president today, and Kanye told us he's got problems, and I believe it. Dismiss, dismiss, dismiss. Maxine, you don't have problems. Dismiss, dismiss, dismiss. So I won't pay attention to that. So then she goes on to say, and this is fabulous, you know, I really believe in the Constitution, and I really believe in democracy. People have a right to think for themselves, to articulate, you know, their thoughts, to protest and all of that. Just throw it all into the pile. So I am absolutely supportive of people who have something to say and they want to say it. Go ahead and do it. Well, what she doesn't say, this is the other part that she says later, when she wraps herself in the Constitution, she wraps herself in the democracy, which most of you don't agree with. We're in a republic, right? And then she was asked about, well, what do you do with a former attorney general who says when they go low, we kick them when they're down? Then she says, well, you know, Martin Luther, we wouldn't be where we are if we didn't have Martin Luther King rallying and protesting. We wouldn't be where we are if we didn't have organized labor rallying and protesting for our rights or equal pay. But she doesn't mention the fact that they did it And the reason that we have Martin Luther King Day was that he was a nonviolent protester who did not engage in quasi-violent or violent or anti-constitutional behavior, which Maxine supports, and I'll talk about it in a minute. And then she says, if you feel you have something to say and you want to comment with the larger, connect with the larger community, then I think you should exercise your freedom of speech and protest. I'm paraphrasing some of that. So then she says, the guy asks her about being nonviolent. Oh yeah, I believe in being nonviolent. Now pick up on this one. This is the part that you got to pick up on. Protests cannot be deemed to be violent. The only thing that can be deemed to, the only thing that can be deemed to be violent is if you touch somebody, you hit somebody, I love this one, you shoot somebody. So those are the three things you can't do. So as long as you don't touch, hit, or shoot somebody, you're free to do whatever you want. So it means, as she has pointed out, so let me pick the rest of this up. You have the right, if you have the right to do it. She believes in peaceful protest, she says. I shall not have it redefined by the president or anybody else. She won't have protests redefined by the constitutional right she says she has. But at the same time, she says it's okay to run people out of restaurants, to run them out of department stores, to run them out of grocery stores, to physically accost them at plays. She applauds when the Vice President of the United States gets a sermon from the stage of Hamilton. Yeah, those things are all okay. So we have the right, I suppose, to accost somebody, to yell and scream at them when they're trying to go to the bathroom in the lavatory. That's okay. We just can't hit them. We can't shoot them. So listen, protesters, listen, Democrats, all you need to do is not push, hit, or shoot them. I suppose stab them probably fits in this same category, right? But you can accost them, you can challenge them, you can threaten them, you can yell at them in an elevator, you can corner them, you can keep them from getting into their cars, you can whack their hat off them, I guess that's touching them, you can do all the rest of the stuff, you can surround them, you can keep them from walking quietly and peacefully in the park. If they're Republicans or conservatives or wear a MAGA hat or a Trump hat or anything like that, you can do all of those things as long as you don't touch, hit, shoot, or I'll add, stab them. God almighty, what have we come to? And how can somebody be in Congress for that period of time and not respect the right of a person? You know, this is the other part of it. We have Roe v. Wade, which says there's a right of privacy, right? You have a penumbra of privacy, and that penumbra of privacy includes the right to do what you need to with your own body. Well, I'm going to tell you that if that exists constitutionally, whether you agree with it or not, I'm not asking you to agree with it, whether that exists constitutionally as a fundamental principle, concept, then it certainly exists with respect to somebody sitting quietly and peacefully eating their dinner at a restaurant. There's a right to privacy. There's a right to not be accosted in your own private ways as you go about your day in the country. And if that's not present, there is no right at all. And I think anybody that's watching me gets that. But I think we need to see this, that we need to see this in the stark terms that are being presented. We've got people like Claire McCaskill, who says that she privately believes what she believes, but she publicly will give you a totally different story. She's taking the playbook from Hillary Clinton that said, well, I have two positions. I have this public position, which you're supposed to listen to, and this private position, which is what I really believe, which is for the bankers and the wealthy and the billionaires and my buddy George Soros and maybe Podesta and the pedophiles and the rest of that. Those are my private stories. You just listen to the public stories and you won't have any problems. All right, one final note. Well, first of all, so thank you so much, Warren, Blumenthal, Harris, Klobuchar, Hirono, Booker, Spartacus, Chuck Schumer, Pelosi, and most of all, Maxine. Thank you for campaigning for us, because rational people really appreciate knowing what one side stands for versus the other, and nobody does it better. Sometimes I wish someone would. Nobody does it half as good as you. Maxine, keep it up. All right, I'll quit. So the final part about this is that it has to go back with my buddy, creepy billionaire banker Steyer, carpetbagger in Nevada and Arizona. He also spent tens of millions of dollars all throughout the country supporting liberal causes, trying to buy his way into the Democratic Party after being a company-busting, job-destroying, a distress asset downsizer who made billions and playing around in the banking field, the Goldman Sachs boy, the Yale graduate, the nasty, sticky billionaire who wants to be president and now wants to hide himself, wrap himself in environmental stuff. Well, what I didn't know, I should have known maybe, what I didn't know is how creepy billionaire banker Steyer is. And when we get to WikiLeaks, and some of you, thank you for pointing it out in the notes, I looked them up myself. So the Podestas are passing around stuff about having a little party, and that party includes walnut sauce. Now, the preoccupation with walnut sauce by insider, pedo-loving Democrats and neocon Republicans is fascinating. I looked it up, and yes, there is, in fact, to my amazement, a legitimate recipe for walnut sauce. Real walnuts in walnut sauce, right? Ground up, you make basically a gravy out of it. That's walnut sauce. But that's not what they're talking about, and you have to know that. They're looking at adrenochrome, they're looking at the little adrenal gland that sits on top of your kidneys, and they're looking at grinding that up to get adrenochrome, which is, especially when someone is absolutely terrified and totally destroyed in one of their satanic processes, that person's blood and their adrenal glands are full of adrenochrome, and boy, that makes you feel good, or at least so they tell me. Believe me, I haven't tried it. I might someday try the real walnut sauce, but I'm not going to try that. So here's Podesta encircling these Steyer boys, Jimmy and Tommy, the Steyers, and so we can say, there's another little piece to this. Why does he want to be president? Why does he want to get Trump out? Well, I'll tell you why. That's because, like everybody else, these guys are running to the weeds, but they're trying desperately to get the rest of us not to pay attention so that they can go back to their dark and dirty deeds, and so that nobody exposes them for what they really are. And some of you might think I'm crazy to believe that, but I don't. Not anymore. If you had told me 10 years ago that there were pockets of elites doing the nasty and dirty things that we have all read about over the last couple of years, I would have told you you're absolutely a nutcase. But we're not. And walnuts, or a walnut code, is part of it. It's not a funny business. That part of it's not a funny business. But fortunately, Maxine is. So enjoy Maxine. pass her around, take a look at these idiot 5 minutes of hers, and just appreciate how much gift she gives the rest of us, because she does. She tells us who we should not be voting for. And if you had any doubt, if you wanted to split your ticket, if you wanted to play little games, take a look at Warren, Schumer, Pelosi, Blumenthal, Harris, Klobuchar, Hirono, Booker, and Maxine. And that should help you out with what you ought to do in the coming weeks. Thanks so much for watching.